What is echoism and how does it apply to narcissistic abuse recovery? Well, that's what we're talking about today at queenbeing.com. So let's get started. Closed captioning provided by Athena Moberg and cptsdfoundation.org. My name's Angie Atkinson, and on this channel, I offer free daily video coaching to help you discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. I like to call it toxic relationship rehab. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button and let's get going. So for this first part, I'm going to share with you something that is actually going to be published in an upcoming anthology that I've put together with the Spanily. But it's the introduction of the book. It's interesting because it kind of all falls together. So let's take a look at this. In Greek mythology, Echo was a mountain nymph. Zeus had a weakness for nymphs, the story goes, and so this made his wife Hera feel really jealous. She would follow him around, attempting to catch him in the act. Echo began to engage Hera in long conversations, potentially because Zeus would ask her to do so. This would give Zeus time to get away from his wife and carry on his affairs. When Hera recognized what was going on, she became enraged and cursed the lovely Echo, leaving her unable to speak her mind. Instead, she was cursed to repeat only the words that another person said. One day, after the curse had been placed, Echo happened upon a striking young man named Narcissus. Since she was not able to speak her thoughts, she silently followed him into the forest as he hunted. Narcissus had lost his hunting companions, so he began shouting for them. "Is anyone there?" Finally, seeing her opportunity to get his attention, Echo repeated, "Is anyone there?" This led Narcissus to shout again, "Let's come together." Seeing a chance to get some face time with the object of her desire, she repeated the words as she rushed to him. Narcissus rejected her and she fell into despair. Soon afterward, Narcissus caught a glimpse of himself in a lake and fell in love with his own image. He became obsessed with it and unable to move, and eventually he died there. Echo mourned desperately, eventually leading to her own death, and she left only her voice behind. Echo, in many ways, represents the victim of the original narcissist. I'm going to leave it at that, but let's talk about echoism. What is that? Obviously, it's connected to this echo business, right? Well, it's considered to be the opposite of narcissism, according to Dr. Craig Malkin, who actually created this term. And psychologists say there's a growing number of people with echoism. I personally find this to be a little bit interesting. As Dana and I discussed yesterday, we've been talking about this for years, but bear with me because there might be some information here that'll be useful for you. So as we know, narcissism is about selfishness, it's about grandiosity, it's about thinking you're better than everybody else, it's about needing admiration. It's not really that healthy when we get to a toxic level of narcissism. But what is echoism? Well, echoism is kind of on the other end of that spectrum. So echoism is where the person is actually kind of afraid to stand out, kind of afraid to feel special. It's about people who focus on the needs of other people above and beyond their own needs. It sounds a lot like an empath. It sounds a lot like someone who has been abused by a narcissist, right? Malkin goes on to say that echoists are often people pleasers. As you may know, if you've watched this channel for very long, I've talked about people pleasing quite a lot. Echoists tend to find it difficult to accept compliments or praise of any kind. Instead of saying thank you, they'll deflect or ignore the compliment. Echoists will always listen to other people's problems, and very often they don't share their own problems with other people. Echoists hate being the center of attention. They blame themselves when things go wrong. They don't ask favors. And it seems like they're always looking for some kind of validation, but they rarely ever actually get it. Narcissists are always seeking out people to give them that supply, that validation. And they tend to look for someone who will boost up their self-esteem, put them up on a pedestal, and someone who will, in fact, put their own needs behind the needs of the narcissist. I've talked about this before as well. This is what we tend to do as empaths and as victims of narcissistic abuse. Echoists, according to Malkin, have learned to survive by echoing the needs of someone else. The only way an echoist gets anything they need is by basically providing needs to the narcissist or the other people in their lives. Interestingly enough, the relationship between a narcissist and an echoist often starts where the narcissist sort of rescues the echoist from a situation that is no good. But the problem is that a lot of times these altruistic types tend to have a real serious payment plan in place. It sort of puts the person in a cosmic debt to the narcissist. So whatever it is that the narcissist wants from you, if they want you to go to church every week, and if they help you out with your rent, or they want you to give them the cutest kitten in your bunch if your cat has kittens, or whatever, they will insist on receiving that payment, and they will act like it's due to them. Obviously, it's not quite as blatant as that, but it's pretty much that. Of course, because most Echoists have grown up with a narcissistic parent, or at least some toxic influence in their childhood, they are usually sort of predisposed to behave this way, where they kind of repress their own feelings. They kind of shove their own feelings down. They kind of go numb in order to help support other people and not really focus on themselves or allow anyone else to focus on themselves. Narcissists love that because then they get to be the center of attention. Echoists feel like they need to give everything they have and then some in order to actually get anything resembling love or support in their lives. They think they should take as little as possible, and they think they should always, just get by on the bare minimum human needs in order to help other people. And I'm not talking about food and water and things like that. I'm talking about love and affection and an ear to bend, things like that. They make a point of saying that Echoists are not doormats, and that just because they're nice and supportive doesn't mean they have to be weak. And they say that a lot of them are really intelligent and successful and more capable of sort of making things happen, and that they might actually get upset if you try to make too big of a deal about them. Malkin points out that Echoists and introverts are not the same thing. Introverts tend to be more quiet because they're thinking a lot, they're processing, they're mulling things over in their head. Echoists, Malkin says, tend to be introverted because they've learned that it's unsafe to express themselves. Of course, some psychologists are saying it's a bunch of BS, as they always have. Some of them are saying things like, I don't believe this, or I'm uncomfortable with this idea. Interestingly enough, some of the psychologists who have been questioned about this have said things like, well, I don't really think it's a great idea because the main form of therapy tends to be you've got to get out of this relationship. Well, call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it a disorder. You can call it echoism. You can call it narcissism. I don't really think any of it matters. I think it's all about someone is toxic if they're toxic. If someone's toxic to you in your life, don't be with that person. I think it's as simple as that. What do you think? This brings me to the question of the day. And the question of the day is, I've got a couple of them for you today. Have you heard of Echoism? Do you think it's the same thing we've all been talking about for years now? And do you think you might be an Echoist? Or do you think it's just a way to potentially get the attention of the more mainstream psychological community? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. As always, thank you so much for being a part of my day and a part of my life, and hey, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. It really does mean a lot to me. Just in case you missed it, I have a new low-cost way to connect with me to get some everyday coaching for a very low price over at dailycoach.app. dailycoach.app, so go check that out. All right, I'm wrapping up, but before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm leaving for you right here and right here. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button right there so we can stay connected and continue on this healing journey together. I'll see you soon.